So 11.1 adapter call on the agenda I sent out was review of the items first in Sprint 2 associated with the adapter, and then talking about Sprint 3. There was also a request to have a discussion on VOL 524 and 525 at the beginning of the call. Niren requested that. Niren, would you like to there was some discussion on this yesterday. What could you give us some background on these two issues for those on the call, and what you'd like to see happen?
Yes, these are two issues that I raised yesterday for the 524 and 525. They are for the H-core adapter and the Broadcom ONU adapter. The 524 is for using the means when the ONU is detected by the H-core, it should use the standard forward ONU detect state as a API to communicate to the ONU adapters rather than using an inter adapter message. If anybody has any questions, I can clarify that because I raised this ticket.
First question, so are these, is this impeding, is this a quality of implementation, or is this actually impeding or blocking work?
It will block the other ONU adapters from integrating with H-core.
Well, is this a different approach, or is this, can the other adapters use the same approach as currently done right now?
This is the one that we have to use it because it is written in the adapter agent as well, and that will make the other adapters to aware about that what is the state of the ONU rather than using inter adapter message. The inter adapter message will require the text message transfer between two of them, and that is not right way. Instead, there is a state.
Well, the way that's there right now is being reviewed and accepted by the module owners, right? So you're proposing to rewrite the way that it currently operates?
No, it is. This is. I don't know why that was accepted by the module owners, but the adapter agent has the forward ONU detect state, which was introduced starting from the XPON, like 6 months back. And that should be the standard way of communicating between the adapters, so they don't have to.
Yeah, and which other adapter, is up there that's an example of using the forward ONU detect state? So is there already an existing example?
Example, I'm not sure, but since my code is not going to be in the public code, so I cannot say that the Nokia, but Nokia we use that so that we can communicate with anybody.
Yeah, see, because that's what I'm looking at is the only way to really, through this stuff as we go is looking at the existing adapters that are up there and following. And I think Chip this before a little bit is we don't have a reference example of something that's using all the.
Have you looked the API for the agent forward ONU detect state? It is very simple. It doesn't have anything other than the device ID and the state. So I don't think you need any example for that.
Niren, it's Raghu here. Just had one question because the inter-adapter message was introduced before XPON itself. So my just concern is because the forward ONU detect is introduced in XPON, and like already people are using that. How one comes to know this? There is one is introduced as something there.
Hey Raghu, you're breaking up. Could you repeat that?
Am I audible now? Hello.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just had a concern that this inter-adapter message, what is there, was there before the Expon itself. So that's the reason people were using that. And as per Niren's statement, it said that this forward ONU detect is introduced in the Expon. So my concern is like how, unless everyone goes through the code or somebody face any issues, no one will, everyone will not go and look into that. So I just want anything newly introduced, somebody has to tell saying this is what is introduced.
Yes, actually, you are right on that. And when I demoed the Expon module, at that time I explained specifically about this API for about like couple of minutes and walk through that API as well at that time to explain like why we need to use the forward ONU detect state and how it works, everything actually. I knew this will happen because I was seeing that H4 was using the other interface. The problem with the inter adapter message is like you are sending text. So sending the text is like you can change anytime the text, and the text is not standard formatted. So how does the other adapter knows when you change the text format, because he has to pass that text, right?
Yeah,
That's the
one thing
main
I
concern
agree.
we had, and so we want to make it standardized that way by using the enums, and enums are already defined, like they are not the one that I defined it, they were already there, and we just want to use the same enum of the upper state, and they have this clear meaning written earlier from maybe before I joined even the Expon, like before we started Expon. So we reuse those.
Right, but
okay.
it's already an existing implement. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
So Niren, you're talking about this has been is a standard way approach. When you say standard, is a standard defined by Expon or it's standard defined somewhere else? Can you provide the reference?
Yeah, it is defined by the Expon. When we introduce the Expon, we define this API, and the API only takes two parameters. One is I believe it's first is the device ID, and the second is the enum that was already there in the VOLTHA core. So we just reuse that same thing, because that way we know exactly what the ONU state is.
Well, I mean, using that approach, I mean, then isn't the standard? It's already in. I mean, just because we introduced it, I guess, is that the standard? I mean, the fact that you're using two existing enums, I mean, that's not really the standard. You're just appropriating some other thing.
I mean, the standard in the sense like when the Expon was introduced, that became our standard API. Because the text is not going to, it will bring us the lot of error and prone conditions if somebody changes the text. All adapters has to adopt the text change. It's harder for
so you don't like the current implementation, is what you're saying, right? So does that mean
and that's
something that's being approved and accepted? I mean,
I'm gonna ask everybody to be quiet for a moment. So this was presented as a bug, and it sounds like it is a requested change in implementation.
Mm-hmm.
And is it in fact a high priority bug, or is it a story that should we state this as a story to change the way this is implemented and set that for a future date into a future sprint? And product owner should weigh in on this, because it's not broken today for at least for some implementations. So
correct.
I'm not sure it's really a bug, but it is perhaps.
We should also point out, I'll jump in and say one thing, the whole focus of doing all this edge core adapter was get the edge core adapter to work with the Broadcom ONU. And, that's kind of what the initial POC3 focus was, for the whole, for the whole chain from kind of, June, July through the October focus. It was really narrowly focused, and this is an expansion of scope a little bit, I think, to getting the EdgeCore OLT adapter to work with multiple ONUs, right? And so,
right. So Kim, I understand, and then thanks for pointing that out. So my question is, right? So since XPON is the I would say XPON everybody accepted as a way to go forward. Now my question is how and I also it is a change of the design in like the Tim is saying, but it basically the existing adapter need to be modified to work with XPON config. I don't see any reason why we cannot do it but I do want to assess the how much work need to be done on the existing ONU adapters. But the premises is, you know, XPON has been defined, and then if it is, that's the way we're going forward. I know the communication between different design may be lagging in during the past. So I'm not sure many people are aware this change. So I think the assumption is probably, you know, whatever existing ONU adapter, the XPON should work with it. But I'm leaning toward to go with XPON approach, but not immediately. So, but I do want to know for the ONU for the Broadcom ONU adapter, how much is the change in order to implement this?
Well, I guess we need to evaluate that, and also it's not just the change, right? It's all the code that's built on top of the current implementation that's already been tested and integrated, right? I mean, that's another set of evaluation that needs to get done.
Right.
Does this involve change in both the Broadcom ONU adapter and in the ASF VOLT 16 adapter, the OLT adapter?
Yes.
So this change on both sides.
And the important party to this discussion is Ciena being the module owner for that Broadcom ONU adapter, right? So, you know, that's because already we have, you know, that discussion we had yesterday about Vol 482. There's a lot of discussion, you know, around that issue, and, you know, a lot of it being, you know, considered by the module owner, who happens to be Ciena, that has certain functionality working on there. So
okay.
So
in the interest,
they really need to be involved.
Yeah, they do. And in the interest of time on today's call, so there's a request to make this change in functionality and a request by Sean Ying to evaluate the amount of work required on the Broadcom ONU adapter and on the EdgeCore OLT adapter, and get back to perhaps by a week from now, come back and make a decision on the how to do this work and when, what priority and when this could be done, and who would pick it up. Is that a fair assessment?
I mean, you know, let's give. This is what I, you know, because I do think, you know, since XPON has, it's basically a framework, and we know change is happening. I know, and since May time, and we know it is trying to work with the future work. So I do think, you know, maybe we're lacking of the request for comment, or how to say that, period, when the design was proposed. But if this mechanism provide a more secure way, more robust way, I'm leaning toward it. So Sean and Kim, what do you guys think? And do we have the Atran present here?
The changes, you know, I think in general the changes are probably good and on the long-term roadmap, right? But the question is, are these high priority bugs, and should they be fixed like right now? You know, that's what we're talking about, because at some point, you know, somebody has to pick up the work and do it, and you know, in light of everything else. And so that has to be considered. What is not working, or what is being blocked because these around these two issues that's not going, and it happens to be inter-adapter. Yeah. Go ahead, Sean.
The view of, you know, what's a better approach. It's a different approach, right? There's a current approach that we have that's working and tested, and now we want to do a different approach. So it's a matter of, we're going to redo the same work again, and for what benefit? So we just need to evaluate what's the benefit.
As I said, if it provides a more robust and more feature proving or security, I'm all for it. So I think if based on Niren saying, you know, if the current implementation just a text format, and when I hear that, I think that there will be lack of you know, a security issue there. So unless someone told me that's not true, security between the communication between OOT and ONT, that's my main concern. So I do think the priority is high. Maybe we can reduce that to medium. I'm not going to see this to be implemented in 1.1. So if anybody against that, let me know. Ken, are you trying to speak something since you're okay?
Yeah. Let me put some clarification there. It's the inter-adapter message. It was meant to be just a generic message, like just send text from one adapter to another adapter. So it was not meant to send something very specific. So what Niren is saying is to use the forward API where we're actually sending a state. So it's a very specific use case, a subset of the inter-adapter message. So if our intent is to send a state, then I will agree with Niren that we should use the forward API. But if it's to send a generic message, then yeah, we should use the inter-adapter message.
And I would assume when a new ONU come up and detect it, that's a state, right?
Exactly. So if we're trying to transfer the message is an actual state, then we need to go with something that is very specific, which is the forward. But if we want something generic, like we don't know some generic message that we're sending, then we can use the inter-adapter message.
Okay. So is it agreeable? This can be my interpretation of this is a state change. A new ONT is coming up. That's a new state. So
in
I
this
think
specific case, I think it should be the forward API, the one that Niren is mentioning.
And with API, then you can translate that to other. Potentially you can also. My question is, with the API and the state change, you potentially can implement that and then send it out to the northbound as, like, for example, Kafka or whatever, right? So. I'm just throwing everything on the kitchen sink here.
So the only thing I think it's missing here, and I agree with a lot of folks here. Like, there's no real example of how to use the forward API. Originally, what we had before, we had the PONSIM, OLT, and ONUs, the adapters, and whatever API change we're doing, we're putting them in the PONSIM, OLT, and ONU adapters. So to use as an example for adapters to use. So any new API that we introduce in the I adapter, I suggest that we should put it in the PONSIM, OLT, or ONU so that everybody have an idea of how to use it. It will much easier.
Exactly, Ken.
Yeah.
Very, very good. That was my point, is along with the introduction of XPON and using this forward ONU state, there should have probably been an example put in the PONSIM, right, that showed using this forwarding message. And that is the basis of why we don't see the EdgeCore adapter using it, because it kind of had its lineage from the Broadcom OLT adapter, which was matched with the Broadcom ONU adapter, that Sienna originally started with. And those adapters don't do this either. They don't do this mechanism either, as far as I know.
Yeah, and is there a definition of the scope of what this specialized message interface is? I mean, is it all state? Is it? I don't understand. Is there a definition of what that is supposed to be used for? I mean, what are the enums are defined around it? What's the function it's supposed to do?
Niren, did you use this as example, right? So do you see there similar things will keep coming up once we get more ONU involved, once we get more OOT involved through the XPON? First question is, has this API being implemented on the PONSIM when you guys implemented it?
I'm not sure. I did it in the PONSIM. I can check it. Most likely it is not implemented.
Okay. So lesson learned. Whatever this, because without your adapter being published, everything seems to be under the table. So, and then if the PONSIM is not implemented, then the community is blindsided. Okay, so I think that anybody will be rejecting my proposal to move forward with this change, pending on the resource available.
Well,
yeah,
I think we need to have a better definition of what this interface is, what it's used for, where the enum is defining, the information that's passed.
Exactly. Right.
Is it used for, if I do an admin down of the ONU, is the state transferred by the same way?
Actually,
we just need better definition.
Yeah, actually, you're right on that. But if you look at the adapter agent, the API definitions over there, we clearly mention, and as well as the name of the API itself is telling that ONU detect. So that means it's applicable to the ONU and its detect state. So when the ONU is detected, when the ONU is undetected, and what will be the OLT adapter has to inform. So that's our only two possible conditions right now there.
Niren, can you do me a favor, since I don't look at the code? Say or can this be documented? And Tim and I and Julie, we are hoping to have a better management on the wiki, and documentation. Telefonica.
Yes, John, I can do that, but I just need because I don't see the other APIs documented. So if I start something then again, I just need a reference what I should write it down on the existing, and then I will write for this one as well. Otherwise, it will be brand new from my side.
So, yeah.
I can do it. I can send it to you by email today.
Okay.
And if that's good enough for you, then I can do it, because all I will do is copy from the definitions file and write some text around that. That's all I can. I can do it if I don't have the reference, and which I see there is no reference for existing APIs documentation.
Well, I guess it's PONSIM, right?
Yeah, that may be an effective thing if you could show the example in terms of PONSIM. If it sounds like it's not that hard to implement, if PONSIM can do it, then that can be sort of a reference example of, and the other adapters, can end up picking it up.
Niren, is that possible for you to do? Can you do go back and then do an assessment on when can you do that demo?
I can look at, because I have to check with my internal work also, like when can I do it.
Okay.
I cannot promise right now because what I see is I just grepped in the PONSIM OLT, and I don't see in the PONSIM OLT there is an inter adapter message. I just did it like a couple of minutes back, but I need to spend some time on PONSIM OLT also then in that case, but I don't see inter adapter message being used by the PONSIM OLT. So
Yeah,
then it will be another thing that PONSIM is using then.
Niren, this is Shad. So yeah, the PONSIM, from my knowledge, is a bit of a hack. So I don't think there's an inter-adapter method over there. I think what happens is a flow comes down and the PONSIM decomposes it into ONU. I mean, basically, yeah, there's no inter-adapter messages over there. It's
so how is the PONSIM communicating then with the PONSIM ONU?
Yeah, there is no OMCI messages between PONSIM, in the PONSIM. So
no, this is not about the OMCI. This is about the state notification between the ONU and the OLT, like in this case PONSIM. So how do you inform the state of the ONU in the PONSIM?
I'm wondering whether because the PONSIM is a top down, so assuming the ONU is there, they don't even, it's a simulated probably, so maybe this part is missing. I'm just guessing.
It's a simulated one, so it's some of the states are by default set, so that's why there's no inter-message communication there.
So asking a technical lead to put the implementation in the PONSIM, at least for this case, can be challenging, right?
Yeah, it will not be. I thought if just like the HCore and the Broadcom ONU, they're using inter-adapter message. So if that was picked up from an example from PONSIM, it would have been easy for me as well.
For the framework and for the health of the PONSIM, is that something we can include in the PONSIM?
I will check it, but I cannot promise you it will be today or tomorrow, something like this. But I will spend time and look at that.
Because and then since the existing text message exchange is already working, so I'm not. And with the field trials coming up, I'm not going to, I'm not going to push this to be implemented to impair the success of the trial. So I'm not. So I don't think I'm going to put this one in even 1.2. So there will be a 1.3. So I think but that's still on the table. I need to talk to Tim and Julie on that one. So can Tim, maybe can we put this one as the VOLTHA future?
Yes, we could.
Anybody has any objection? But Niren, if you can,
yes, that's fine.
That's fine. Okay, and if you can provide
it's fine for me, but only Sean, only my concern is that if it is not decided certain release, then it will be harder for you to see the interrupts happening. Okay.
Yes,
so you can
I
tell me
understand.
whenever
Yes.
you're ready.
Right.
We will do that time the interrupt. Then we have to delay our interrupts. Then.
Yep, I understand that.
Okay.
So just housekeeping, is this a bug or is this really, should this be recast as a story for work to be done?
I think let's make it as a story. I guess there's no future. There's other. Yeah.
And should we keep it as a high priority?
Let's keep it high.
Yeah, I think it's high. Yeah,
yeah, I think it's high. Yeah, and that we'll put it on the top of the backlog, and
because if there's an epic that picks up an epic that is like inter-adapter, you know, having multiple adapters all working with, you know, certain OLTs, right? Whether they're EdgeCore or any others, right? This is kind of an important part of it. If they're XPON based, they need to use this mechanism, it sounds like.
Right.
And are we missing any other interfaces that we didn't know about? I mean, are radio functions
probably
we need to integrate with? I mean,
that's exactly what I'm saying, right? That I don't think this is the first. This is going to be one and only. I think there are things coming up.
Yep.
So if anybody's ONU is interested in working with EdgeCore, please. Do we have a epic called ONT OLT interoperability? I think that's one of the big item there.
That should be, yeah, that certainly is, and
so this one should be put in there, right?
Right.
I mean, if we want to find a placeholder for this story, let's put it in there.
We'll either I'll find that or create that epic and assign this to that epic.
Right.
Okay. Okay, so this was 524. 525 was similar and related. And so hopefully we can just agree to lump the two together.
525.
525 is the is that
Welcome,
yeah, I think this also has to do with standardizing this message exchange.
Right.
Because the pairing up
at least we should not consider.
Go ahead, Neri.
At least we should not consider this as the same as a 524, I believe. But you can do it. That I'm not going to block it. But this is telling us like very clearly that in G988, the OMCI message is a bytes. They are not ASCII. And what we are doing is in the EdgeCore requires in the ASCII. So we are doing that ASCII conversion in the Broadcom ONU. So that will make harder even for any adapters.
Well, I mean, it's just a different approach. I mean, the standard's still being met on the PON interface, right? Still G.988 format. It's just about how do we transport those messages from VOLTHA to the OLT. I mean, this seems again a little arbitrary.
Is that Sean? Is that maybe some OLT expecting binary, some expecting hex or something like that?
But that interface is up to us to define what it is, right? It's the way it is right now is the de facto standard, right? I mean, if we want to change it, then that's okay. Somebody is saying, okay, I like it this way versus this way.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, and
yes,
I think
that's what
the module owners need to get involved in there as well, because this was accepted in by a Broadcom ONU module owner. So that needs to be considered as well. Now, this is a change, and maybe we needed to have a little bit wider reviewer consideration. So when something like that gets implemented, I'm not sure how this got missed when this stuff came through. If we need to do a better job at announcing these changes or getting people on reviews or something like that, maybe there's a problem in the process we're using.
And again, it's one approach versus another. I mean, the standard is still being met on the PON interface. I mean, there's no issue with that. It's just, you know, what's the interface between VOLTHA and the OLT itself. And that's, you know, right now the de facto standard is what is currently there and has been accepted. I mean, if you want to change that, again, that's more work that again, testing and other things have been built on top of that would have to be retested again. I mean, it's
right.
So I think it's a little more
like this gets into a quality of, you know, it's just like the other one we talked about. It's a preferred, Nurin has proposed a preferred implementation here, right, that promotes adapter operability, right? It's the same kind of thing, because what is there, it works. It's not a bug. It doesn't impede anything. It maybe impedes using a different ONU adapter with you know, the EdgeCore OLT, but so I think this is kind of the same category.
Okay, so
yeah, should we not? It's not the same issue as 5.
It's not the same, right?
But it's a similar.
But I have to say something. When you look at the OMCI message definitions in G988, okay, which has been released for years, okay, it says there the message contents are bytes, okay, they are not ASCII.
They are. And it only defines the interface on the PON, and that's what they are, right? And that's how it works now.
But now, when you look at the OMCI message that has been sent from the Broadcom ONU, it is actually doing the bytes into ASCII and then forwarding that ASCII to the OLT adapters. So then isn't it harder for the OLT adapters to adapt to the ASCII because the EdgeCore wants it ASCII, right? Not the OLT, or any another adapter cannot be using ASCII as well. So why don't we stick with the standard says is the byte?
Yeah, it's just the preference, right? I mean, the way it's working right now is it's ASCII. There's an encapsulation.
It's not about the preference, it's about the complying to the standard as much as possible, right?
Well,
yeah, and we are. The interface is the same.
All right, one at a time, please.
You know what? I need to see the message. What is the standard way? What is the the ASCII way? I guess it's I should know that.
but the standard is on the PON, right? That's the definition. It's between the OLT MAC and the ONU, and that is being met. I mean, it works right now, right? You can send OMCA messages, and the ONUs are happy.
So you're saying because the adapter is in between, so as long as the adapter interact with each other, there's really, you're not violating the standard.
Yes,
that's right.
We've disaggregated the ONCI.
Can I ask one question on that? If it is working in that way, what is wrong if the Broadcom ONU adapter do not send the ASCII character and just ASCII message, just send the byte message as per the G988? What's wrong with that?
I guess okay, so first question, do we require the Broadcom to change their implementation?
Obviously, because the message is coming as ASCII, and only the EdgeCore can understand the ASCII message because they want in the ASCII. So my simple thing to tell here is like, as an ONU adapter, I will send only in the bytes, just like standard. And the EdgeCore, if it requires into the ASCII, he can do internally in his adapter in the ASCII format. Nothing is going to block, because in the Nokia, I might be doing something else. In the Atron, they might be doing something else in the OLT adapter. That's something internal, but why that implementation has to be forced on the ONU side to send the message? The translation should be in the individual OLT adapters, right?
Well, I mean, again, it's just a preference, right? This is the way it's working right now. If you want to change it to be bytes, it's going to be more work, right?
So
proxy, there's a proxy call defined in there. It says send OMCI message. What the proxy call doesn't define is the format, how that message is embodied. It just says, here is an object that has something, and it's got an OMCI message. And the internal iAdapter interface did not mandate exactly how that had to be. And that is probably important in this case, that if it either gets transferred in binary or text, but it's an arbitrary, looks like an arbitrary implementation defined mechanism. As adapters are, below the below the line of standardization, right?
Right. So I guess when the VOLTHA started, it is a prototype, right? So now we want to productize this thing. I do think we want to have something to promote interoperability and promote different ONU, different OLT can work together, and I talked to Telefonica, I talked to DT, I talked to Turk Telecom. Everybody is talking about the interoperability. So that does follow the standard as close as we can. Will enforce it. Will promote interoperability. I would assume yes, right? So, Julie, you're familiar with the OMCI. So I think this one is also interoperability, and I do again agree. Unless someone tell me otherwise, right? Just like the adapter itself can do whatever they want as long as the ONU and the OLT defined based on the standard. But again,
Sean, if I could, in the interest of time, I think there's at least some agreement that this is a quality of implementation issue, and there perhaps is a better way to do it. There would be work required to change this both on the ONU and OLT side, and testing associated with it. So that has to be weighed in to when this would be done.
Mm-hmm.
So, and therefore I look at this one similar to 524 in that perhaps it should be done. We can look into it further, but it will come at the expense of something else. So it needs to be prioritized.
I think I had to ask one. I had to clarify one thing.
Okay.
There was a question from it says it is just the choice. I don't know who is the caller 02. So there was a question. So what we did, we sent the non-ASCII message from the Nokia ONU to the H core, okay, which is like non-ASCII at that time because we don't know what to send it to the H core. So we sent it just like as the standard byte message. And what happened? Like the H core even didn't process that message; it just threw away that. So there was a question from caller 02. So I'm answering on that. It's not the preference of the adapters. It has to follow the standards.
If I may, if I may, the standard is on the PON. The standard is not between adapters. What happened between adapters is how we should define it. If we define that between adapters we are going to use byte, then we'll have to document it and tell everybody this is how we're going to transfer messages. If we define that it has to be ASCII, then we'll have to define it. This between adapters is not the standard. Standard is on the PON itself.
No, but it's not even about the adapters, right? It is just like the definition of the OMCI, which says use the bytes. So we use the bytes. There is nothing to do with the adapters at that time, right? So what is the internals of the adapters? Like H core likes to ASCII, which is the H-course limitation. We should not bring that ASCII limitations into the Broadcom ONU, right?
Well,
it's not a limitation. It's just that's the choice of the implementation, right?
Implementation decision.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
Ken has it clear. Only thing we have to do is define and document exactly how does this interface work between adapters for that send proxy. We should mandate in that API that's in the iAdapter interface that says it's either ASCII or it's binary or exactly what the structure of that message is. And I think that's all we have to do.
Mm-hmm.
And and probably we'll decide to do it in binary. And like you say, it makes sense. And then it's up to OLT adapters to get that message to the OLT hardware by however means it needs to. So, I think it's clear. I think what we need to decide is, does this get done immediately, or does it is it deferred?
And the question is, I mean, there's already an implementation, right? That's already there. So if we're bound by whatever Nokia has defined as their interface between their adapter and their OLT, why did Nokia just publish that interface and then we could all just agree on that's the interface?
Yes, the interface is being published. It is published in the adapter agent, right? And we're using the same interface that others are using as well. We're not using anything new. Only the extra interface that we introduced was the
OMCI is different.
No, the OMCI, we used the same interface that was defined before XPON. We didn't introduce anything on that one. Only the interface that we introduced was the ONU detect state, which was 524 that we discussed.
So why are we at the situation now where one decision for implementation has been made that's different from the decision that you guys did?
That's one I explained, right? Like the H core likes to use the ASCII, and our implementation is wrong there. We use the ASCII translation in the Broadcom rather than in the H core. That was the wrong thing. That's what I wrote this bug for.
So it's not wrong or right.
All right. I'm gonna grab.
I think we're kind of going around in circles here at this point. But
yep. Okay. We've basically these two issues have taken almost all our hour. I'd like to bring this to a close at this point. Sean, I'm going to look to you. Can we defer this and study it further in the interest of moving on other issues that are?
So for the purpose of interoperability, that's maybe for something we need to discuss also in the future, a little bit later. Does adapter who's taking the I guess the problem is I'll say the issue is the OOT adapter, the edge core adapter does not accept binary. I think that's, or when it receives a binary, it doesn't know what to do, right? So is that a fair assessment? So another way to say this is the edge core adapter is expecting everybody to use ASCII. I think that's a fair assessment, right? So I think there's some work need to be done if we want to have interoperability. Either we define the interface, the format, or the adapter need to be smart enough to adjust.
I'll actually, which came first, the Broadcom ONU adapter sending ASCII or the edge core adapter expecting?
I think it is. The OLT need to demand the OLT need to. I think the OLT is the master for interoperability, or a slave.
Right.
Okay. The iAdapter interface did not specifically define what the format, how the proxied OMCI message comes across, and the example was, it was done in binary in one case, right? But because that API did not mandate how the argument was passed to it. A change was made, and there it goes, and it works. Now, if the API doesn't and that's probably what we need to do, is just say, this is what it's going to be. It's going to be in binary, and all adapters, OLT and ONU adapters, will conform, to that operation. But we just have to define it, right? And say how it is and make everything conform.
All right. To bring this to a close, can we call this a story? Can we put it at the top of the backlog? I want to close out on this, because with this, we're going around in circles at this point.
And I think this one should be highest, and then make it story, because there's OMCF message exchanges, so I think it should be highest. And then VOLTHA 1.3, VOLTHA Future.
VOLTHA Future will define a 1.3, and we can put that in there, and that's okay. Right. And it belongs in the same interoperability epic that either exists or will be created.
Exactly.
Okay, good.
Sean, are you trying to say something?
Well, I guess I've already said what I wanted to say. So
okay, let's find a way to move forward. Okay. So, in the remaining 6 minutes, there was also discussion perhaps required around Vol 482.
Can I interrupt for 1 second?
Hi, Darren.
Is it related to the same issue?
No. I just want to tell Sean and Tim, both of you, that I have something else, so I'm going to drop it, okay?
Okay. Yes. Thanks, Niren.
Thank you, Niren. Okay, Tim.
Okay, so 482, support for disable and renable ONU and Broadcom ONU adapter. So this one was up for discussion yesterday, and there's been plenty of comment on this one. Does this one need further discussion today in the remaining 5 minutes?
I saw product owners being quoted there, so sorry, I have not reviewed this one. So,
okay,
Sean.
You want a 2-minute summary of the state of this one?
Just one quick note, because there was a design review, and there was a lot of comments put on that design review. We just need to clarify the action that needs to happen when an ONU is disabled, and after that when it's re-enabled, because at this time the flows are removed from the device when it's disabled, and when it's re-enabled we're expecting ONUS to send back the flows, but ONUS is not sending because this is, oh, you already have the flows. Mm-hmm. So really what needs to happen is really to know like what the action that needs to happen when the ONU is disabled, and then when it's re-enabled, and then some of the action may need to be done in the core, and some of the action may needs to be done in the adapter.
Can I just make a comment on that? So, so in G.988, in the standard, there's a paragraph about what the ONU is supposed to do once it's admin down, right? And so basically, in theory, all the actions to interrupt the service flows would be taken at the ONU itself. So in theory, nothing would have to change from the OLT's perspective, as long as the ONU blocks all service flows and does the ONU. So
the ONU will. So should we still remove flows from the ONU?
So what I'm saying is, I'm just asking Broadcom and just to see what actions their ONU supports when we do the lock action of the ONU GME down at the ONU. If the ONU takes care of all, taking down all the service flows, then I suspect that we don't really have to do anything at the OLT side, so we could just leave the flows in place. Mm-hmm. That would seem like a simpler approach. So we'd have to worry about taking down the flows and putting them back. If the ONU can basically block the service flows themselves.
But that would this be a generic action for any type of ONU, or will it just be something that the Broadcom will be doing?
It would be any ONU compatible with G.98,
Okay.
as far as the the lock action, lock and unlock.
I think what I'll take an action item on this one. I'll reach out to at least Atran, Sienna. I mean the ones who did have their own ONU, right? Even though they also using Broadcom, but maybe different implementation. So I'll solicit the input on this one from the vendors who has also ONUs. How's that?
Oh, that's
Sean,
good.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Very good. Okay.
Yeah. And Tim, I did want to point out that that 482 commit, right? That sort of matches with the current functionality of the edge core adapter, right? To make it work with Broadcom. So and that change is not there. So there's I worry about that skew a little bit, and that's also dependent on the coming changes that we have, to put in for, the field trial. The field trial issues too also have that code, or depending on that code being merged. So it's either got to merge as is, or we've got to quickly come to an agreement on how that should be implemented. That's all I'm trying to say.
Okay, so getting resolution on this issue is important to getting the v1.1.0.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
yeah, and we're targeting tomorrow as merging all that code. So it's probably good to expedite this.
So basically,
there's dependent merges. This has to go, or else we have to fall back and retest everything, or basically remove that feature, which is the disable re-enable.
Right.
We just have to leave it out.
Yeah.
So, and I don't think that's what we wanted to do. So
maybe there's the short term fix, and then longer term,
right?
Something else.
It was discussed in the Garrett review. There could be a short term workaround, but nobody liked that because the short term might be permanent.
Yeah,
I think there's a middle ground somewhere that we should take, because if it's going to involve changing in the VOLTHA core or something like that, it's not going to be
that's not going to happen in less than 2 days.
Than a week. Yeah. Yep.
Right. Okay. Sean, why don't you weigh that as well, Sean Ying, as far as getting to the release? Yeah.
Okay.
All right. We're out of time. There were a couple of other issues that are in progress: 513, 514, 516 in Sprint 2. These were reported yesterday as being likely to close by this Friday, by the end of the sprint. Is that any update on those issues? No updates? Okay, so trusting that those will still...
Sean, we're on track with we're still on track.
Sorry, I can't see the screen. So what were the issues?
Right, these were just the current status of 513, 14, and 16.
Oh, okay. So I think all those three were targeted for Thursday. I mean, all the coding's complete and pretty much testing complete. But so we're shooting for Thursday to do that. But I guess there's a link to the enable disable code as well. So
right.
We get to have a solution for either go, no go on. This is a short-term solution the way it is, or we just back it. We have to back it out.
So those are linked to.
Yeah. Linked to the enable disable. Was it 842? Was it
482?
Yeah, 482. 482. Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So basically, we'd have to revert to just say that's disable re-enable is not supported, and we'll just leave it unsupported. In it has to do with the Broadcom ONU adapter. leave it unsupported there, just like it currently is, unless somebody has changes for that to make it work. But I haven't heard anything.
I don't see the module owners for that on this call, unless Ken, you can comment on that. Okay.
Sorry, I didn't follow.
Any changes to the Broadcom ONU adapter that would help out with 482?
I'm not the module owner of that one.
I didn't
talk to Steve Crooks on that one.
Yep. So you're the only one that I could see from Sienna on the call, so I called you out. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
Okay, we are a few minutes over time. I think we made it through most of the agenda, at least those things we needed to get through today. So we're looking at closing out Sprint 2 at the end of this week, and we do have some candidates for Sprint 3. So we will, in next week's call, launch into Sprint 3, and I'll get an update out on at least cover those off in the minutes, even though we didn't talk about it today, just so they're up front for everyone to look at for next week. Any closing comments or questions?
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you. Stopping the recording. Everyone have a good day.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Thanks.